Fa la 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 la. Lace the trim and push the beads up. Fa la 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 la.
The Snowy Day by Ezra Jack Keats. One winter morning, Peter woke up and looked out the window. Snow had fallen during the night. It covered everything as far as he could see. After breakfast, he put on his snowsuit and ran outside. The snow was piled up very high along the street to make a path for walking. Crunch, 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 his feet sank into the snow. He walked with his toes pointing out like this. He walked with his toes pointing in like that. Then he dragged his feet slowly to make tracks. And he found something sticking out of the snow that made a new track. It was a stick that was just right for smacking a snow-covered tree. Down fell the snow, plop, on top of Peter's head. He thought it would be fun to join the big boys in their snowball fight, but he knew he wasn't old enough. Not yet. So he made a smiling snowman, and he made angels. He pretended he was a mountain climber. He climbed up a great, big, tall, heaping mountain of snow and slid all the way down. He picked up a handful of snow and another and still another. He packed it round and firm and put the snowball in his pocket for tomorrow. Then he went into his warm house. He told his mother all about his adventures while she took off his wet socks. And then he thought and thought and thought about them. Before he got into bed, he looked in his pocket. His pocket was empty. The snowball wasn't there. He felt very sad. While he slept, he dreamed that the sun had melted all the snow away. But when he woke up, his dream was gone. The snow was still everywhere. New snow was falling. After breakfast, he called to his friend from across the hall, and they went out together into the deep, deep snow. The U.S. Postal Service showcased Ezra Jack Keats' most beloved story, The Snowy Day. Written and illustrated by the celebrated children's author, it is one of the 20th century's most prominent stories centered on an African-American child.
Where to begin? First of all, we are very much about providing access and information to everybody, but children, of course, right at the top of our list. And the library is often crowded with children learning to read, and we want them to read books in which they can see themselves. As Dana said, this is what she saw when she looked at this book. And Keats' idea in 1962 that children should be able to see themselves when they were reading, that their legacy should be carried on by local authors, was really revolutionary at the time. He understood personally what it was to feel discrimination. He changed his name to Keats in the wake of the Second World War from Cats. And so this is something that was driving him in a way that was really prescient because, as we know today, These efforts are critical and are informing the conversations that we're having in libraries and across the country. And so this day is extremely important to us. You know, we always love stamps that commemorate authors, but I wouldn't be telling the truth if I didn't say that this one was particularly important to us at Brooklyn Public Library, where Ezra Jack Keats was born and raised. So we hope that our shelves continue to be filled with books that celebrate the diversity in Brooklyn, and we also hope that you continue to come back and use the library often and remain loyal supporters of our efforts. So thank you all for being here, and thank you to the Postal Service for this great stamp.
It's a book that's been in my family. It's a book my mom read to me, and then when my boys were young, my wife and I read it to them, and then we would pass it on when they grew older. So that's what we did with all these books, especially books that had African-American characters in there. So we would pass it on to other family members. When their kids grew older, they would pass it on to other family members. So it circulated throughout, and we're just used to seeing these books in our house and on our shelves and on our coffee tables and all. Books were a big part of my life growing up, and I think the early introduction of books is why it's so special that we're dedicating these stamps here at the library. My mother read to me a lot. She made sure that I had this thirst for knowledge and that I had a love of books. And because of the snowy day and the books that it inspired, I saw images that looked like me on our trips to the DC Public Library, and we had a thing in DC in our neighborhood called the Bookmobile that would come and drive up, and we knew the day that it was coming on Saturdays and what time, and I would go in and we had all these books, and that was something that my mother helped arrange. So she's been a big advocate of libraries, so this is special for me all the way around. And hopefully she's watching on Facebook Live today. These are the libraries that we had, the Bookmobile, the DC Public Library, our main library was the Martin Luther King Library downtown, and our local Lamont Riggs Library in our neighborhoods. These were my internet, for the non-millennials and Gen Xers in the area. We had a thing called the Dewey Decimal System, catalog cards, and then this little thing with images on there called microfiche. You had to get the little machine. So I am dating myself. As you said, Dana, I've been in the Postal Service for more than 30 years, so it was around. But, the stamps that we're about to see each have Peter in that famous red snowsuit. And the first stamp is going to be Peter forming that snowball that he thinks is going to stay, perfectly round and solid when he brings it in the house. And then you see him sliding down the mountain of snow when he realizes he's too young to play with the older neighborhood kids. And then, of course, he's making the snow angels. That's another of our stamp images. And then finally, he's leaving his footprints in the snow like this and like that. So I would say that through Peter, children just saw, especially African-American children, just saw a positive image of themselves, one that said, I fit and I belong. And here it is in print. And so today we're going to share these groundbreaking images on stamps. So on behalf of the Postal Service, I want to invite our speakers, our guests to come up today to help us dedicate these stamps that celebrate Peter's Snowy Day adventure and has been a powerful, powerful image for children all around the world for more than 50 years.
Well, good morning. Good morning. How often do I get to pull a silk robe and reveal these amazing stamps? It's just a pleasure to be here, and I am like many of us who grew up on the works of Ezra Jack Keats. I, like so many of us in this room, was that kid for whom the snowy day changed everything, because not only did I see myself, I saw exuberance. I saw that feeling of joy that so many of us experience on a snowy day. And it was Keats who really understood, no matter what color you are, that we can all experience kind of that wide open adventure. And again, this is the perfect venue for this, because as a parent and as a reader and as a Brooklynite, there have been many days where I have spent my time where my heart and soul and mind have just been filled in this library. So I love to come here It is my home away from home, and it is one of the places where I got the inspiration and the help and the research for writing a poem for Peter, the picture book biography about Ezra Jack Keats, which was published by Viking. It's nice to see my Viking publisher and editor here this morning. It's just a pleasure. So for this very special occasion, and only for today, I have written a special message. A letter to my friend Peter. Dear Peter, do you see what you've done? You've stamped your way into our hearts. Peter, Peter, you've arrived. A little snowy day postage stamp surprise, filling us up with so much joy. Back then, in 1962, when you first came onto the scene, we rejoiced. Now, dear Peter, you've done it again, sent us to a place that only the most delighted souls can reach. And speaking of reaching, thanks to you, Peter dear, thanks to you, Peter dear, we can now dig deep, deep, deep into mailboxes filled with images of you. There you'll be, proudly greeting us on the upper left of envelopes that spring from that mail carrier's satchel, carried through rain, sleet, and of course, snow. Oh, dear Peter, so many packages, greeting cards, love letters, and even the enveloped electric bill will be made happy by the stamps that celebrate the beauty of your hue. Your brown sugar whimsy, flap-flapping snow angel wings, making footprints that stick, whizzing down a snow hill, stuffing a tiny white icy ball into your red-on-red pocket. Dear Peter, imagine the faces that will light up with, oh, 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 a letter for me, as your exuberance brings tidings of comfort and joy. Yes, dear Peter, you are the one who can sign, seal, and deliver what is uniquely yours. Dear Peter, you are here now, proud to be the little enduring wonder that celebrates the true meaning of USA forever. Thank you.
The Library of Congress includes The Snowy Day in a list of 88 books that have shaped America. I agree. Not only is this estimation justified, but I cannot think of another picture book that has had such a large positive impact on how we as individuals think of ourselves as part of a culture that includes others. In this book and those that followed, Ezra featured a diverse group of children in an urban working class neighborhood, which actually served as the basis for Sesame Street, also a breakthrough comment on our culture. To this day, Ezra's books are considered the gold standard for what diverse picture books for children should be. We still need to see our diverse population reflected more in every aspect of our public life. And I am proud that the USPS, the United States Postal Service, has chosen Peter in his red snowsuit to represent every child in their winter stamp for 2017-2018. I often say that Ezra would have been thrilled to know of the honors that have been bestowed on him since his death in 1983, and I mean it every single time. But he would have been especially thrilled with the stamps. When he was a boy, and already determined to become an artist, despite his parents' very strong discouragement because they thought he would starve, certainly starve, Ezra set himself a goal to create a stamp so beautiful and so perfect that it would pass as real. And he spent hours laboring on every single detail, including cutting the small serrated images that are the iconic symbol of stamps from around the world. Then he sauntered down to the schoolyard and he showed the stamp to a kid who was an avid stamp collector. And the young stamp collector fell for it. He coveted this unique stamp and offered a few of his most precious specimens if Ezra would only trade with him. Ezra very reluctantly agreed, and then he flew home in a panic at what he had done. And sure enough, a few hours later, the stamp collector was pounding at his front door saying, "Give me my stamps back! You cheated me!" And Ezra meekly slipped the real stamps under the closed door and never did anything like that again. But now, with the help of the USPS, Ezra has made good on his trade. And now we can trade this for real. This story was told to me by my father, Martin Pope, who couldn't be here today, but who recently celebrated his 99th birthday. I agree with that too. My father and Ezra met when they were in junior high school, and they remained best friends until Ezra died. These boys were impoverished children of immigrants, and neither felt he had a chance, any chance, but a bright future. But Ezra grew up to be a world-famous children's book author and illustrator, and my father is a world-famous scientist whose work is, among other things, the basis for the more efficient solar cells and panels that are now being developed. The lives of these two young boys are a testament to what children can overcome despite great odds if they are only given a chance. The significance of this moment is further enhanced by our being in the Central Library of the Brooklyn Public Library. Ezra received almost all of his encouragement for his art from his teachers, from his librarians, and from countless hours spent in the stacks of the BPL. As part of his legacy, the Ezra Jack Keats Foundation has maintained a strong bond with the BPL. Linda E. Johnson, President and CEO of the library, has been instrumental in spearheading our joint programs and in making every BPL branch a community center, offering information, support, guidance, and entertainment to all the neighborhoods in our borough. So, we are, and I forgot what Andrea, give me that. I forget something, right? And so we are proud to present Linda with the New York State Writers Hall of Fame plaque. Here it is. This was awarded to Ezra posthumously in 2015. It is the New York State Writers Hall of Fame plaque presented by the Center for the Book. And we are also presenting you, Linda, a little bit more personally, with a museum quality print of a poster that was created by Ezra, in which the character of Peter can be seen in his pajamas, imagining himself as an astronaut, an explorer, and a scholar. Some of the things we hope the children visiting this library, all the children visiting this library, will feel free to become.
It's amazing. It's so apropos. And given the things that we're going through now, it's just a great reminder that we're all beautiful and we all have a place in this world. And so I think this is a great honor for everyone. But I really want to thank the United States Postal Service for taking on this task, and for Deborah Pope, who pushed this. And I know that Ezra Jack Keats would be so proud of all of us. So my feelings are absolutely wonderful. I'm Storyteller Tammy Hall, so I tell the stories of Ezra Jack Keats, and I promote diversity, and so this is just a great time for this to be happening now.
And how do you think that this book revolutionized or changed race relations?
It helped a lot of people to feel good about themselves. I mean, because when I first read this book in the 70s, you didn't find picture books with children of color on the cover, let alone a black child. And so it really opened up that door. I mean, it's ironic that a Jewish man would open up that door for African American writers and illustrators, but he did a very important task. It changed the world. It revolutionized children's books all over the world.
First of all, I just want to say that we are so proud to be a part of this celebration because this book in particular was written by an author who grew up and was raised in Brooklyn and who understood the importance of all children seeing themselves in literature. And so that we should be celebrating this kind of revolutionary thinking, which in 1962 truly was, is really exactly the kind of work that libraries should be doing and are doing every day.
I'm really happy to be here today. I think this is a really great stamp. It has a lot of personal meaning to me because it's a book that came out first the year I was born, and it was also a book that my mom read to me, and a book that has had a positive impact on children of color, especially African American children, for more than 50 years. So representing the Postal Service here today has been a great honor, and I'm really glad that we're dedicating these stamps and releasing them to the public so they get to see Peter and all of his snowy adventures.
Ezra Jack Keats understood that all children need to see themselves in books, and he was the first one to feature an African American child on the cover of a mainstream book, and that was groundbreaking at the time that it happened, and we would have hoped that many folks followed. It's taken a while, but Ezra Jack Keats' The Snowy Day continues to be the stellar example of books that said, yes, let's put a child of color on the front of that book, and now we have a stamp to reinforce and celebrate that.
You had a wonderful poem that you read to the audience today. Can you tell us a little bit about that poem?
Yes, I wrote a poem that was really an extension of a book that I've written about the life and times of Ezra Jack Keats. The title of that book is A Poem for Peter, and I wrote an ode today, a love letter to Peter, that iconic character in his red snowsuit, just saying that you, Peter, will be bringing greetings of love, tidings of joy to so many, especially this holiday season.
And what do you think of the stamp?
The stamp is beautiful. I am ready to put it on the upper left corner of many envelopes to send many good wishes.
Well, the Ezra Jack Keats Foundation supports public schools and public libraries with money for arts and literacy programs across the country.
And tell me, how do you feel that the Snowy Day transformed race relations, this book?
Well, it transformed a sense of what it means to be part of a whole culture. The reason this book was groundbreaking was because it was embraced by the culture as a whole. It was not considered a niche book. It was considered a book for children, the broadest sense, all children. And that in and of itself was a change it was a sea change. It was a sense of a different way of looking through the window. And it took time, it took, decades. But I believe that the children who grew up reading this book and then reading more and more books with diverse characters in it did change then the way they grew up to treat their peers.
And it was one of the first prominent books that centered around an African American child. How did he create this idea?
It was a very natural thing. It wasn't an effort. It came out of years of illustrating other people's books. He realized he'd just never seen a book that featured an African American child. And Ezra really identified with all children. And one of the commonalities between great children's book writers is that very often they haven't grown up completely. And they identify with other children. Ezra identified with all children. And he's decided that if he ever had the opportunity to write a book and illustrate it at the same time, or illustrate and write, that he would center it on an African American child, because they're there, simply because they're there.
And there's a mystery about this child from Life magazine, photographs.
I think what you're talking about is the series of photographs that Ezra cut out of Life magazine in 1940, over 20 years before he wrote The Snowy Day. There was this sequence of pictures of a little 3 or 4-year-old boy who was getting a vaccine. And he approached the camera and the event very innocently and happily. He was being paid attention to. And then he got the vaccine, and it hurt. And he looked at the camera, hurt and amazed. Why did you do that to me? Why? What did I do? And so there's this childlike evolution of feeling that you see in these series. And I think that Ezra resonated with the transition, the emotions that this child was sharing with us. And this was not an identified child. We never found out who this child was. But it was someone in Georgia who was 3 or 4 in 1940. And we don't know. We've tried quite a bit to find out who he was or is, and it's been impossible to trace him.
And do you feel that he felt himself a discrimination being Jewish?
Ezra? Oh, there was no question. There was no question. He couldn't get jobs, and he changed his name, and he got jobs. And the change of name was preceded by experimenting to see, if I send in my resume with my original name, will I get an interview versus will I get an interview if I use this other name? And the other name got the interview. So this is not something that you question. You know it's there.
And just to end, what would he think of this stamp today?
Oh, he'd be tickled. He'd be thrilled. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. And I think he would be. Ezra was very modest, and part of his thrill would also be amazement.
I'm Kristal Hart reporting on the Snowy Day stamp here in Brooklyn, New York. Hope you've enjoyed the show, and thanks for watching.
La 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 la. Place the trim and push the beads up. La 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 la. Drain the barrel, fill the meat cup. La 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 la. Harmonies we sing, recorded. La 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 la. As we empty pantries hoarded. La 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 la. La 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 la.